Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Gibson. I'm Director Curator of Gallery 1CO3, which is the campus art gallery at the University of Winnipeg. So thank you very much for coming to Enacting Stories, a conversation with Joi, Arcand, Sonya Ballantyne, Leena Minifie, and Tasha Spillett-Sumner. And this panel discussion is presented in conjunction with the exhibition that's in Gallery 1CO3 right now, When Raven Became Spider. And I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. We reside on Treaty 1 territory, homeland of the Métis Nation, and traditional lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples. I want to acknowledge Gallery 1CO3's position as part of a larger system that has participated in the dispossession of Indigenous cultures, and to recognize that museums and art galleries, including Gallery 1CO3, have long excluded Indigenous peoples and their voices. Gallery 1CO3 aims to redress the situation by foregrounding Indigenous curators, artists, and their perspectives in our current programming. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Julie Nagam, who is sitting next to me. And Dr. Julie Nagam is chairing today's conversation. Dr. Julie Nagam is Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Arts, Collaboration, and Digital Media, and is an Associate Professor in the Department of History here at the University of Winnipeg. She was former chair of the History of Indigenous Arts of North America, a joint appointment with the Winnipeg Art Gallery. Dr. Nagam's SHIRK research includes digital makerspaces and incubators, mentorship, digital media and design, international collaborations, and place-based knowledge. She is a collective member of GLAM, which works on curatorial activism, Indigenous methodologies, public, curatorial, and artistic, curatorial activism, Indigenous methodologies. All of this work, plus her public curatorial and artistic practice, have been featured nationally and internationally, including a solo exhibition of her art, Locating the Little Heartbeats, which was shown at Gallery 1CO3 here in January and February of 2019. She is the Concordia University and Massey University Scholar in Residence for 2018-19, and she is building an Indigenous Research Center of collaborative and digital media labs here in Winnipeg. Please help join me in welcoming Julie. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I want to say Chimagwich Marcy, thank you so much for having me. I want to welcome you to this beautiful territory where the Great Waterways meet and the homeland of the Métis people. It's always my honor to host people in our home territory, and in particular the University of Winnipeg. It holds a special place in my heart now that I'm stuck here forever, I feel like, or at least my parents have decided that's the case. I want to say today is a real honor and pleasure to get to introduce some of our guests. I'm going to start with the fabulous Joi T Arcand, or AKA Mad Auntie on Instagram. Joi was one of the artists in Insurgence Resurgence that Jamie and I co-curated in 2017-2018 at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. She had the stunning work Up the Stairs. I also had the pleasure of getting to see her work at the Sobeys Award, which also was incredible, and I feel like they all could have won. She is an artist from Muskie Cree Lake Nation in Saskatchewan, Treaty 6 territory. She currently lives in Ottawa. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with great distinction at the University of Saskatchewan in 2005. And in 2019, just as I said, she was shortlisted for the Sobey Art Award. Her practice includes photography, digital collage, graphic design, and is characterized by a visionary and subversive reclamation and indigenization of public spaces through the use of Cree languages and syllabics. In addition to exhibiting her artwork widely, she co-founded Redshift Gallery, a contemporary Aboriginal art gallery in Saskatoon, founded and edited the Indigenous art magazine, Kimawan? Yes. And curated numerous art exhibitions. Next to Joi is Tasha Spillett-Sumner, which sounds a bit weird for me. I just realized I was actually just going to introduce you as Tasha Spillit. She's an incredible force to be reckoned with. She's also carrying a little life force in front of her, so it's also really exciting to get to have her here in this space. For those of you that don't know, she comes from a beautiful line of activists. Her mom is heavily involved at the University of Winnipeg. I get the pleasure of working with her at the Indigenous Advisory Circle, and so you have a pretty big shoes to follow, but I'm sure you will do it. We also had Tasha as a guest on one of the panels, same with Joi as well, as the future is Indigenous at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. Tasha draws her strength from both her Niuan and Trinidadian bloodlines. She's a celebrated educator, author, poet, and emerging scholar, but her most heart-tied is contributing to community-led work that centers land and water defense, the protection of Indigenous women and girls, no small suit. She is a PhD candidate at the University of Saskatchewan, where she holds a Vanier Canadian Award. Her work as a doctoral student, she is weaving together her cultural identity, a commitment to community, to produce a body of research that amplifies Indigenous women's demands for justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people, and serves as a continuation to the resistance against the assault of colonialism. Next to Tasha is Leena Minifie. Did I get it right? Minifie? Sorry. She is a Kit Callan, British digital strategist, impact and media producer based in the unceded Coast Salish territories of Vancouver. She is the owner and CEO of Stories First and founding partner of Cool World web app, currently in development. Leena holds a BA in Indigenous Studies and a BFA in New Media from the Institute of American Indian Arts in New Mexico. Her experience includes media arts projects, including series, documentaries, webinars, radio broadcasts, culture retention projects, and news sites. She has worked as a journalist for agencies such as CBC Radio 1, CTV, Native American Calling, APTN, who's also in the house today, and co-founder of Ricochet Media. Leena leads with a visual pattern thinking and multidisciplinary approach to problem solving. She believes that communication is all about creativity, passion, with a healthy dose of radical truth, transparency, authenticity, reciprocity, and a pinch of out-of-the-box thinking. Last but not least, the incredible Sonya Ballantyne. We had her as a guest at the Winnipeg Art Gallery in 2016 as part of Dr. Sherry Farrell-Rossette's Indigenous film series. I think you showcased your first film, which was incredible. I'm excited to see the new work. She's an emerging filmmaker and writer from Mississippi. No? Say it again. Mississippi Cree Nation. Man, Cree's gonna get me. Sonya won the 2014 Emerging Filmmaker Pitch Competition at Gimli Film Festival for Crash Site, and then in 2016, a short film pitch at Imaginative Film Festival with Eagle Girl. She recently spoke at San Diego Comic-Con about Indigenous media representation. She became interested in film because she wanted to see people like her mother as the starship captain at Star Trek, or fighting aliens like Ripley. She wanted a Native hero that existed in the present or in the future to show us how we made it. So these are our panelists, and I'm going to invite each one to come up and talk about their practice for about 10 minutes, and then I have a couple questions for them, and then we can open it up for questions to the larger group. And Joi, do you want to start? Okay, sorry. No pressure. Here, I'll let you go.
Hello, hello. How do I get the thing? This is the thing. Ah. Oh. View. Play. Oh, geez. View. No. Help. Is this the thing? Tanse, Joi Arcand, Zigasud, Muskeg Lake, Ochinia, Treaty 6 territory, but I live in Ottawa for the past 4 years. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of this touring exhibition curated by Leena for the past few years. How many years? 6. It's been many years touring. I had the pleasure of seeing it in Ottawa Art Gallery, Wanuskewin, in Saskatoon, and now here in Winnipeg. So it's been quite the journey. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the work that I have in the show specifically, and then maybe I'll talk a little bit about my larger practice and how it all weaves together. So yeah, the work that's in the show is the beautiful Indian super maidens, and that work stems from some early work, which I'll get into here, Oskinikiskwawak, which was a series of photographs I started in 2004. And that was when I was still in university at doing my BFA in Saskatoon. So this was like a school project. And it started when I went to the local McNally Robinson and I found this book in the bargain bin, and it was called Indian Maidens. So I bought it for like $5, and I noticed like the imagery was highly problematic and really like romanticized these women who were sitting in these very painterly scenes. And so I decided at the time that I wanted to sort of mess with that imagery. And so with my background in graphic design and photography, I used my Photoshop skills and also wrangled in some of my cousins to model for me. So this was the first sort of iteration of the work. This is curator Felicia Gay, who from 2004 sat for me, and this was taken in my living room. And so I took their images and I replaced the original, presumably non-Indigenous women who were the original models for the Indian Maidens work. And these have, I don't know if you can see, but at the bottom there's some text. And I like to think of them as early memes because I'm pairing some, I'm not just like replacing these images, I'm placing sort of humorous texts to go along with them to sort of give another layer beyond just the image. So I think this is also the first instance where I started using text in my work, which becomes like a lot larger piece of my work later on. So this one says, "My feathers are digital." And this is me from 2004. These are dispersed with some of the originals. So this is the original, illustration from, these were made around the 1920s, early 1900s. And this is my sister posing for me. This one says, "My Lone Ranger is a cowgirl." And this is my cousin who is about 9 months pregnant in this photo, and her daughter is now 15 years old. And so in 2012, I had the opportunity to redo these images, and so they were displayed in Ottawa, actually, long before I moved there. They were displayed along Bank Street in these bus kiosks. So I revisited the project. I shot 8 more images, and I enlarged the text to make it more readable on the street. So I've changed the text with the times as things change in society. So that's the shot of how they were displayed in Ottawa. The beautiful thing about this project at the time when I shot it, I guess the way I work is very fast, and I booked Paved Arts in Saskatoon. They have a sort of photo studio I booked all the equipment, I booked a room, and I put a call out to all my friends and cousins, and we all gathered in one day, and I shot the entire thing. And what I really loved about that experience is the laughter that we all shared, laughing at the images, but then also taking the power back from them. So this one, because I knew I was in Ottawa, which is where Electric Powwow started, I wanted to give a nod to that. And there's Felicia again. So it was fun. I did have to reshoot a lot of the early images because the technology from 2004 didn't hold up for blowing them up so big. So with that, like in the back of my mind, I came across this image on Facebook. I think one of my friends had shared it, and I thought, well, now this is interesting. There's this really, really bizarre imagery going on in this. I believe this is from in the late 1800s. It's an advertisement for a burlesque show that would have been in the Wild West shows of the time. So this would have been like a large image that was painted on canvas or something. There's some weird stuff going on in here. There's a lobster with a man head. There's a duck man or a bird man there. There's all sorts of wild things happening. So I thought, well, this will be fun. So I booked Paved Arts again in Saskatoon in 2014. I put a call out to 14 Indigenous women, and we did the photo shoot in 2 afternoons this time. And this was the resulting image, which was, I was thinking about like what on earth, or in this case, the moon, were these women doing? And so I started to create a backstory for them, which is how it became, I wanted to make them something larger than life. And so I started, at the time I was reading a lot of comic books, and I wanted to make them this sort of gang of women who would gather together and conspire against, evil forces. And their home base was on the moon, and they work privately, and some people work solo, but they often gather together to share resources. And so each of the participants got to make their own persona based on how they see themselves in the world, their own strengths as Indigenous women, and they got to write their own cards, their little super maiden cards. So there's the side-by-side. I did add some political figures into my new version and some other imagery. There's the spaceship from the Brave Star comic in the background. And then, so in 20-something or other, I did a second iteration. And this one involved 12 extra super maidens. So anybody can be a super maiden. It's kind of like, the Avengers or something. And so everyone's got their own unique powers. And so here's a bit of the cards. Each card is handmade by myself, and I was looking at it as something that I would have made when I was like 12, 13 years old. So that's why they're sort of aestheticized the way they are. The images are Xeroxed. That's very cut and paste. So it's kind of a throwback to my younger self and who my heroes would have been if we had these kind of representations back in the 80s. So I enlisted some of my artist friends, and we had a lot of fun too that day. You might recognize some of these folks. This is my cousin, Julianne, who's also in the show. This was a nice parallel to when she performed in the first exhibition. So yeah, that's that work. I'll quickly go because I don't want to take up too much time, but I just wanted to show a bit about how maybe some of my other photo work works within the realms of, I guess, time travel or futurisms and graphic art practices. So this work is from 2009 here on Future Earth, and I've took a lot of the images from Saskatchewan in Cree territory and replaced all the signage with Cree syllabics. So again, with my graphic arts typographic background, I always find ways to merge those with my visual practice. And of course, the work that was in Insurgents Resurgence here in Winnipeg was one of my neon works, which speaks about the revitalization of Cree language in public spaces. And that was the piece.
Have it now.
Yes. It lives here. So yeah, I guess I'll wrap up there, and I look forward to talking with all of you in a bit.
Can I move this up? Yeah. Oh. Okay. Watching and talk to me, my name is Tasha Spillet, now Spillett-Sumner. So first of all, thank you for all coming out on this beautiful rainy day, and then for the invitation. And I was kind of just joking because I literally have not done a public talk in many months, and so thank you to the organizers for getting me out of my sweatpants. So it's nice to be here and talk to people who are outside of my own household. So like was said, I am 5 months pregnant, so I'm having a hard time also speaking at any length without getting out of breath. So this is a new experience for all of us today. I also wanted to say that I was invited specifically to talk about my graphic novel, Surviving the City, which was done with a Métis artist named Natasha Donovan out of Vancouver. And so I think that that's kind of what this graphic novel, this little project of mine, has kind of gotten me into this artist world, which is so not where I really feel like I never thought of myself as an artist before this little book kind of catapulted me into a different world. And so I find my home. I've carved out a home for myself in academia, which is a different place that uses a lot of different ways of being. Some are not so healthy. And so what I found, she's laughing, she's like, I know.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Everyone's great. No, I'm just kidding. So what I found is the deeper I got entrenched into academia, the more I needed a lifeline, the more I needed something for myself so I could breathe, so I could move thoughts and ideas and images through myself in a way that I thought would really be important to the people who are going to consume them, to the people who really I owe all of what I do to. So it was really reflective of my own community in a healthy and helpful way. And so my practice right now is mostly just working, well, right now I'm working on my research, which is in Indigenous land-based education, and to understand how gender operates within Indigenous land-based education. But like I said before, trying to find a way that art can kind of deliver an exit strategy for myself. So as I find myself creating more and thinking about what does it mean to create big, beautiful thoughts in a way that other people can find their way to those big, beautiful thoughts that are not so captured in institutions like the ones we find ourselves in today? And so to kind of express that, I don't have any slides. Like I said, sweatpants have been my way of being for the past 5 months. But I wanted to do a little bit of reading to kind of give you an idea of my practice. And so this one is called Dearest Ones, and it's kind of interesting because I read this piece at an Indigenous Feminisms panel, which I think you also, Indigifem, which you also curated. And now I found myself at a totally different place in life. So this one is called Dearest Ones. Dearest ones, I can only imagine your faces when I squeeze my eyes tightly and allow my thoughts to drift away from climate disaster, resource extraction project announcements, and the public execution of Black and brown bodies documented in shaky iPhone videos that get curated in Facebook feeds between ads for Forever 21 and trailers for the newest Armageddon-type movie. On the day that I sat down to begin to write you this letter, the Cyber News headlines read, "Remains of Indigenous woman found today near Winnipeg." Today there's a mama who once sat and imagined her babies as I now sit and imagine you existing in her own nightmare. The article reads, "The remains of this young woman have been found outside Winnipeg more than 9 months after she disappeared. This young woman vanished in August of last year after leaving a Winnipeg hotel. She had been visiting her family from her home, First Nation. On Thursday, her remains were found buried near a ditch by a farmer in Springfield who was checking his crops." And sorry, I usually do a content warning, and I'm sorry, my pregnancy fog brain has missed that. And so that part is over. Dearest ones, it is my greatest sorrows that one day you will learn how trauma wakes up trauma. This woman's name is now attached to the thousands of other names of women who could have been your aunties. Names that I now carry like iron-casted flower petals overflowing from a basket made of cracking willow ribs. Dearest ones, I hope you are born with my mother's hands, the only ones I know that are strong enough to hold such an inheritance. The Thunderbirds came back to visit today after their long departure from our territory. I wished for them. My thoughts are silenced by their loud singing and dancing. I think they came to bring their medicine to the people and the land, both grieving for their lost relative. I often wonder if the land and water hurt like we do when one of ours gets stolen from our circle. Do they ache? Is this what makes storms and earthquakes? If it were you that was stolen, I'd become a never-ending hurricane. So it goes on, and Julie was talking to me about how being pregnant has now changed my writing. And so I'm pregnant with a daughter. And so when I found out we were pregnant with a little girl, it was like this moment of being like, oh my gosh, it's a little girl, and being totally thrilled and excited, which was met almost instantly by this overwhelming fear of what it is to bring up a daughter in the world that we find ourselves in now, bring up a girl who will visibly be a young Indigenous woman. And so she's changed my practice entirely. I feel like I write with poisoned arrows now because I'm much more decisive in how I write. And I really think that as artists, because now I've come to the understanding that there's an artist that lives in all of us, we can use whatever gift we have to write into the world, paint into the world, take images into the world that we want to create for the ones that we love the most. And so I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Shortest person on the panel. So all my people are very short, or all under 5 feet. Just so you know, when they say "Gechachla," stand up at potlatches, they say, "Oh, we are." So I just want to acknowledge the Treaty 1 people here and say to Cygnet for having me, invited me, and thank you to Jennifer and Julia and the panelists, and for your words. I am going to use the clicker now.
Yeah,
There's
you should be able to, just get out of it.
Okay.
Yours should just be on the
Okay. So this is. I use PCs very rarely, but I can do slideshow. Okay, thank you. So the show kind of started actually when I was living in Regina and the executive director for Sagayawak. After going back from Regina to Vancouver, I had been in touch with Dunlop and we started talking about ideas, but it was actually seeded, the seed was planted in Regina, and this show was really made for a Dunlop audience. It was, Dunlop, if you guys are familiar with the space at all, but it's this art gallery and a library, sort of in central downtown Regina, in which I feel like is a heart space where everybody kind of goes to. I think families go there, youth go there, and it's a really open doors for everybody in between. And so it was going to be this intentional, family-friendly, cross-generational audience. And so it's traveled and gone to. It's going to 8 different places now, which I never expected. I thought it was just going to be in Regina, but I'm really happy that people have traveled their work around, and I have one more show in January, and the artists are like, when am I getting the art back? Haven't seen it for 4 years. So it took 2.5 years to make, and has been traveling for about 3.5 by the end of it. So thank you for bringing it here. When I first looked at the work, I was looking at everybody's work. So I was raised in the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s. I used to read comic books. I didn't really have television. I didn't really have a phone until I was about 12. I was raised in Kitimat, Prince Rupert area. In Gechachla, my people are Kikatla. They're on Dolphin Island, which is about a 4-hour boat ride off the coast. And my family's Gispidwada, killer whale, and I'm from the house of Widali, so we have like a clan house system. And I was really thinking about just being a child and sort of what would be my escape. And the escape to me was these ideas of superheroes and transformation. So I'd be in my room with a flashlight under the covers, looking at comics every night because we didn't really have TV. And I feel like there's so many other Indigenous women and men and people who were influenced by comic books. And so I tried searching for the work. And lo and behold, lots of people I admire and respect have kind of visited this graphic form. And Joi didn't mention before, but she actually ended up designing the entire book afterwards as well. So yeah. And you were also designing lots of books at this time. So I'm really happy that we have to get you to do that as well. So looking at work from all different corners, I actually really wanted to get across Turtle Island. That was my intention. We have Jeffrey Veragay, who's Port Gamble, Salish on the other side of Washington. Ella Maya Tailfeathers, who is Blackfoot and Sami. Sean Bailey, who's Navajo. Julian Herney, who's Cree, Métis, Mi'kmaq. Sonya Sue, who's Kwakwakiwak, and Joi T, of course, who's Cree. And their works kind of spoke to me in a way that I just really wanted to break away from kind of all the news around that time. The news was like packed with sort of negative and stereotypes. The news kind of reduces us to these two-dimensional beings, and looking at the transformation of masks and transformation masks in my culture, I wanted to really talk about sort of resilience and about our own ways of transforming into being. So I'm going to advance. So there was a few other people who inspired this work, and I just really want to lift up Jolene Yazzie, who's Navajo. I actually saw her work when I was a student at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and she's an amazing graphic novelist and sort of artist. She's into photography mostly now. She's in the book, and I saw a few different things where it's like mixing of the culture of course, the Hulk and. Coming into the Hulk's mad because treaty's broken. This is a Stephen Judd's piece, but and this is Andy Everson's work. I didn't get this into the show because they're kind of done at that time. But Andy Everson kind of talked about the hero and the villain, and if you look closely in between the two, there's actually not a lot of difference. There's only like one or two different lines, and so Indigenous concepts of hero and villain to me are really interesting because we're not just two-dimensional in our stories. It's not like the Bible. It's not black and white, good or evil. In my stories, anyways, the raven and the eagle, to me, they all have different characteristics, and they're neither good nor bad. They just are. They're just being, and we can be either of those things depending on where we are in life. So I looked at Sonya Sue's work, and so this is actually work, like you said, Joi, that you're kind of experiencing that graphic phase in your undergrad. Sonny went through his graphic phase also when he was in his undergrad, and found this piece. It was a button blanket called "When Raven Became Spider," and that's the title where the show comes from. So Sonya Sue really was visiting at this time, printmaking and painting on drums, and sort of looking at the idea and the concept of Raven. Who is Raven? Well, Raven, to me, and I think everybody would agree, they're a narcissist. They like to preen their feathers and have all the attention and be in public, and they totally would have an Instagram account and be an influencer, I'm sure. So he was trying to think, like, what would Raven come back as in this modern day, and in graphic novels and pop art, he think that that Raven would push through and be something like Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is actually the most known and well-known out of all the characters. And looking at Joi's work, I definitely found that this was amazing, and I can't believe your generosity for putting together another 12 women for my show. So after this work, I thought this was incredible. I really wanted to sort of represent the power and matriarchs who are in our communities. They don't get enough attention. And I just want to talk about transformations that are coming from within and not sort of affected by any outside powers, because we have those ceremonies. Our mass dances, our blanket dances are about transformation, and that's in our own terms, in our own time. So this is really bringing back agency to our people and sort of how they want to see themselves as powerful in whatever way they want to. So you already went over this, so I don't have to go where it came from. Shamba Ali was looking at sort of Navajo woman and his culture, and so Navajo is also, or Dene people are also matriarchal, like I'm matriarchal, some Shan people are matriarchs as well, and he had taken sort of the woman and sort of embellished, so you can see they actually have traditional, every single kind of piece has like a traditional homage. So they're wearing the squash blossom here and the belt and the squash belt, and these are like very, very unique symbols to each of their families and their territories. And this is kind of worn as our, not only our regalia, but as our powerful pieces to kind of face the world. Jeffrey Vergey mixing, again, much like Sunny, the work of form line within these classic superheroes like Batman, taking what he knows as his own form line and his own tradition and sort of mishmashing it with the comic influences. I really like Hunger Speaks because it kind of speaks to the nuance to stories. So this creature actually that Jeffrey's done, he actually goes around, the Silver Surfer, he actually goes around, he's a good guy, but he goes around kind of destroying planets, but the planets are not inhabited, so he has a deal that he'll destroy the planets, and if he does that, he tries to harm the least amount of people as possible, but this guy sort of eats the planets afterwards. But they have a deal and sort of this reciprocity in this, to me, this treaty, this agreement. I'll just skip to the other one. So Julian Herney, as you saw in one of Joy's pictures, she did a performance. So in Regina, when it first was first exhibited 4 years ago, 3 years ago, she was working on a piece actually that was dedicated in the memory of Michelle Serrater, who was both of our mentors at the time, and she's now passed. And I kind of dedicated this show to her. She became sort of this buffalo woman, superwoman. So she was, in her performance, or was taking sort of buffalo bones out of a dish and sort of eating them and then throwing them away. And this is kind of the representation to embody buffalo woman, and what was always in the prairies and the territory of Regina was the buffalo at one point. And so this is kind of going back and sort of honoring the woman, honoring the recipes, honoring the food, honoring the sustenance that was given from the land. And she was able to go into a Comic-Con at Regina and sort of take it over without people knowing, which was a very interesting performance. So you'll be able to hear her see her outfit and hear the performance in the show from the audio. And I guess you guys can't see this, but she had a huge buffalo robe at the time as well. So Ella Maya, if you were to see this work and speaking with her, she was like, I don't think she's a superhero in Red Girl's Reasoning, but I was like, well, she's kind of a vigilante and she kicks ass. So to me, I think that but just say like, what's the difference between a vigilante and a superhero? I don't actually say it's a very gray line for me. And so in that piece, you can kind of see her transformation from within herself and being able to sort of, I don't want to work it, but take individual power and ownership over her future and help other people. So I just want to say thanks to Jennifer Matatek, who kind of helped me put all this together. And I wanted to just mention again Michelle and Lacey and Sigewalk and Dunlop Art Gallery and all the artists who participated. You can come and approach me and ask me questions afterwards. Yeah, Toyek Cygnet, thank you.
You should say that the reception's at 4.
Oh yeah, sorry. There's a reception at 4 today, so that's where you talk to me too. Yeah, I just wanted to say like my bio was read out, but it was like my digital bio. I am more producing now. I've been able to produce I went to film school a long time ago, as well as did interactive new media, and I'm producing in the world of TV and television at this point, which has been exciting. And all the artists that who've been in here are doing actually incredible things, and I can't wait to tell you about them all. Especially congratulations on your SOBI nomination, I think. Yeah, it's just been traveling for a long time, and I'm really honored to be able to be here and see all the artists kind of grow and move on to different things. So.
Do we have internet on here? I could pull up a picture. Let's say, I was gonna brag about.
I was like, I hope we have internet. We are the university.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Fingers crossed.
Let's see, hold on. Bing, what the heck? Sorry. Well, let's keep this up there. Tanse, everybody.
I got the worst Cree accent, so I have terrible Cree. My name is Sonya Ballantyne. I am a Cree filmmaker and writer and reluctant public speaker from Mississippistick Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. If Thompson was the wall and Winnipeg was King's Landing, Mississippistick would be what's the name of the structure from? Winterfell? Yeah, that would be it. So that's where I'm from. I was recently named, last year, or early January, I was named a Barbie role model despite the fact that I've never played with Barbies. And I told them that when they asked me. I'm like, do I have to have played with them? Because I never did. My sister did. She had all of them. I recently returned from Vancouver International Film Festival where my next film, Eagle Girl, had its world premiere, which I wanted to shout out to Amanda Strong, who programmed it. I'm always happy when Nietzsche people look out for Nietzsche people, so that's really cool. I was also at New York Comic-Con on a panel about Indigenous sci-fi and horror, and it was really cool. It was the first time I'd ever seen a Native person other than me and my sister in cosplay. There was a girl dressed as the 13th Doctor, and I'm like, this is the best, so I'm planning to go back next year. My next work is a Daphne Ojig graphic novel for Portage and Main Press. Which I'm planning to do with a lot of color and focusing on her youth. When she was young, she was sick and she had to leave school, so she spent a lot of time with her grandfather at that time and learned a lot from him. I'm also working on a memoir for Portage and Main. We haven't really done a contract yet, so I'm still talking about it, though, because they haven't contracted me to be quiet. So. But I'm hoping they'll let me include Jeffrey Verreg's art because he wanted to draw the cover image for it. And so the memoir is tentatively titled Stephen King Was Wrong. and it relates to the time when I was a teenager and decided I wanted to be focused on a career as becoming a writer. So I read Stephen King's memoir on writing, and I'm like, he'll tell me what to do, and so I want to be a famous writer. And after all the stuff where he talks about his life and such, he gets to the point where he gets to his amazing advice, and it's just read a lot and write a lot. And as I read that, I looked in the mirror across from me, and I threw the book at the wall. So I was so annoyed with it. So I'm like, I guess I got to do it myself. But I was recently, an essay I wrote called Cree Supergirl was in the Dark Horse comic anthology, Pros and Comic-Cons. So please check it out if you can. It has a lot of really cool stories about various people attending comic book conventions. And my essay focused on attending my very first con in Winnipeg and the con at San Diego where I had a panel, and I was the first Swampy Cree person on a panel with San Diego. So it was pretty cool. Yeah. So, I'm also going to be writing for a women in wrestling anthology because pro wrestling and Native people goes together like peanut butter and jelly. So I'm also working on, related to that, I'm working on my first feature film, which is called WW She, and it's about a group of Native girls on the res who start a wrestling promotion. And at New York Comic-Con, I was able to convince Mick Foley to appear in it, so I'm really excited about that. But the big news from Comic-Con was after hearing my panel, I was approached to possibly write a book in the Star Trek universe. So I'm like, so I'm hoping it means it's really cool. Like, they haven't contracted me to be quiet, so I'm allowed to say that they approached me, not that I'm going to do it, but it's very exciting. But anyway, so to get to the point, so I am a big fan of the filmmaker Taika Waititi, who is Maori. He was the director of Thor Ragnarok, which came out recently. And I remember he said something about how every movie created by a Native person is a Native movie. So by saying that, he says that Thor Ragnarok is a Native movie because he made it, so of course it is. And I always love that idea because there's always this idea when you're an artist that you have to create works that fit under what you are stereotypically. So I always am faced with that stereotype of having to write from a certain perspective or write in a way that doesn't offend people about my culture. And so I always say to heck with that and write what I want. So my first film, Crash Site, which is what was mentioned in the book here, I did not realize I was making some of the choices for Crash Site that I was doing until somebody pointed them out to me. I just always wanted to see a superhero that looked like me. I always wanted to see a superhero that looked like a girl just hanging out at Portage Place that would be followed around our deans. Like, I wanted that girl. So when I created Crash Site, I based Cal, the lead character, on Superman, or how Superman would be if she was a native girl who had to leave the res. So I always like that idea of, because there's this line in Superman, the 70s movie, where Jor-El, his father, tells him to always hold in your heart the pride of your special heritage. And that always stuck with me as a kid because I'd always been people always threw racist comments at me because I was a native and a girl. If you watch my TEDx, that comes up a lot. And Superman was always my way of knowing that there was always somebody out there who saw the best in me and knew I could succeed. So that's why Superman's always been my spirit guide. So I love him. But the Portage Place girl that I created is basically my Peter Parker. That's who I wanted to create. And I don't, as Tasha said, I don't feel like an artist either. I don't feel like an activist, and I don't really feel like a role model or a hero at all. Because I just selfishly got annoyed that I wasn't allowed to be on Star Trek, and I wasn't allowed to be Superman, and I wasn't allowed to be Batman. And so I decided that as long as I was able to, I was going to make sure that somebody who looked like me was always going to be at the lead in the films I created or in the books I did. So it's just, so if I do get to write for Star Trek, I'm going to make sure that Michael from Star Trek Discovery is actually Kree as well as Vulcan. So I'm just going to make sure, even though she, because she's raised by Spock's family in the show, and I always believe Spock was Kree too. So just to cut from the rambling there. But to end with, I always liked that there was this quote about Christopher Reeve was one of my favorite actors when he was still alive, mostly because of Superman. But I remember he said this quote about how he continues to play Superman because he loves the idea of what Superman represents being planted in kids throughout the world. And that was something that always got to me because I wish I could have met him and told him of the tree that grew from me because of him and because of Superman. So I hope that I'm growing that tree in the kids like me who still need heroes like the ones I needed when I was a kid. So on that note, thank you.
So you can see we have a pretty incredible, diverse crew of ideas around visual culture, visual narratives, superheroes, poetry, curatorial practice, and visual art. And so one of the questions I thought we could ask is, why is it important for Indigenous people to identify with superheroes? And how could this relationship be empowering, or is it empowering? Sonya?
I think it's just because superheroes are always seen as the best of humanity. And for the longest time, we weren't, not even people of color were never included in those classes of people. Like, the trinity of DC is Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, and they're all white-presenting people. And, though I think Superman is Cree, too, but, everybody's Cree unless they, everybody's Cree unless they do. Well, I said that on my panel when I was in New York, that, if no one specifies, I always assume that Cree. The Cree is the default. But I think that it's important to include Native superheroes because I'm always a big fan of them because kids really love them. Like, I thought Crash Site, when I made it, was going to be something for me that would never take off, but it's 4 years old. It's as old as my nephew right now, and it's still being bought up at the distributors by schools, from schools that really want elementary kids and Native kids to see themselves in a role that is positive. Like, I remember when we filmed the movie, Jade, who plays Cal in the film, she was like, I'm so happy to be in a film that's sad. and so I wanted to, like, because stories that are serious are important too. Like, we need films about residential school, but we also need these things to show that we can be heroic and we can be the people that are looked up to and we can be the people who save the day. And that's always something I wanted from my media. And I think I've met a lot of elementary school kids who want that too now. So it's cool to not be the only Native nerd now.
Yeah, I was trying to think of somebody said indigenerd, right? Indigenerd?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just want to point out, if you guys haven't seen this dope beaded Star Trek pen, anyways,
Here.
I need to know it. This is the best thing I've seen all day.
Well, I wore it to New York Comic Con for my picture with Tom Hiddleston, and I was hoping he'd notice it so I could have 5 extra seconds with him. I'm just like, please notice it.
Well, yeah, we'll talk after. But there's an Indigenous producer that's been working on Star Trek lately too. Anyways, so we were talking about why it's important to see superheroes. So I sort of think that we always have seen ourselves in that way. I think through transformation, masks and dances, and sort of talking about our Nox, which are supernatural beings on the West Coast that live in the deep sea and that live in the sky, that we've always kind of had these supernatural beings within and woven into our story fabric. And so when we put on those masks, when we do those dance, we are those supernatural beings, we become them. And so this is our transformation, and our transformation comes through ceremonies and also through learning in life and hardship. And I just wanted kind of, this is why I did this show, is to kind of show that we have that set within us. It's not necessarily in a retaliation against anything else. It's just something that we do and always have been. And I just really don't think we get to focus on that stuff at all ever. So.
I just wanted to quickly add that I really, when you were presenting on the work that kind of blended the hero and the villain, I really appreciated that, because what I find a lot of times in like our pursuit for our own wellness, we get essentialized into only being good, only being sacred, only being pure, and I feel that leaves such little room for us to act in our humanness, for us to act in those sometimes days where we don't feel like being super great, and I think that it's really important for us to create spaces for people to say like that. I'm not terrible because I'm having this moment at this time, and I'm still a heroic Cree, obviously, and I can have these very human ways of being too. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I think like representation matters, and so I like that a lot of us spoke about our own childhood experiences with media, and seeing ourselves reflected back is so powerful. And so that's when I was making my series, and also giving my friends who participated the chance to see themselves as super. You know, like oftentimes we get stuck in certain roles. Maybe it's our jobs. Maybe it's, you're a teacher. Well, that I think is a superhero quality in itself, So I think it's easy to get stuck in our earthly beings, but I think we all have that within us, the superpowers.
On that note, I really want one of my own superhero cards, but anyways. Let's do it. So my next question is, do you feel graphic novels can reach different audiences than just our standard text-based books? And if so, why or why not? And what kind of stories do you think that they can tell us? You want to start, Tasha? Yeah.
Oh, sorry for me.
No, I was going to say Tasha.
Yeah, Tasha, go first.
Okay. So when I worked in the public school system, I worked for about 5 years in the public school system as an English teacher, and the most effective way to reach young people was through graphic novels. It was a way to, I believed it was like an equalizer, especially in classrooms where people struggled with learning English, where people struggled with literacy. It was a way to connect them to stories in a way that was really deep and meaningful and impactful, that wasn't so hidden in language. And so when I didn't seek out actually to write a graphic novel. They kind of came knocking, and at first I was like, I'm not sure. But then I reflected on my time as a teacher and all those students who, as soon as they had a graphic novel in their hand, it was their key into being a reader. And I thought, wow, that's so powerful, especially as a young person who really struggled with literacy and reading when I was going through grade school. I remember thinking, like, if I had a text where I could immediately connect to, but also feel like I didn't have to really struggle to get through, I could just enjoy the process, that would be such an easier, more gentle way into reading and discovering things that you really like to read. So it was the teacher in me first, before, I guess, the emerging artist, that thought, this is a really important medium.
I think they're important, yeah, because I was one of those really big nerds as a kid who loved reading books. Like, I actually got in trouble in school for reading books. Instead of going into gym class, I'd hide under a ping pong table. But I think graphic novels are important, too, because working in film made me realize that certain aspects of the visual experience don't really necessarily come across when you're reading text format. And rather than writing like a 250-page memoir that I was going to do, because I wanted to be that person on the back of the book, like smoking. Well, not smoking. I don't smoke at all, but like looking like a traditional author photo, right? And I'm like, that's not me. And so when somebody approached me about doing a graphic novel version, I'm like, well, that works out a lot better, because the way I see life is better presented in that way than in like written format. Like, I want to because I see the world like Batman Forever. Like, that's how it looks to me. And so to be able to share that experience with others would be so cool. And again, it goes back to that idea that I saw everybody as Cree. When somebody told me that, when I saw the cover for The Hobbit that had a white person as Bilbo, I was so angry at that. I'm like, I told my teacher, that's wrong. Bilbo looks like my dad. So I got really mad. And so the idea of being able to portray a Native person and actually show them as a Native person was something that blew my mind. And so I really think that they're valuable, just to show that what these people look like, rather than what the where am I going with this? I love the idea of it being set in stone that this is what people look like. So I really love graphic novels, and I hate when people say that they're not real novels. I'm like, let people read what they want.
Yeah, you kind of just took me back to when I was probably like 9 or 10, grade 3 or 4. Like, me and my friends got really into ElfQuest, and we used to role play ElfQuest, and they were Cree. So, and I think like reading ElfQuest when I was at that age of like 9 and 10, my friends and I in school, we used to draw our own characters, and we would make up our own characters. And I think that the other aspect of graphic novels for me, or comic books, was that it got me drawing. Whether you were tracing the characters, it was like this entryway into like creating, these universes that were, not just your everyday life. So, yeah, that's magical.
Yeah, I think everybody said everything.
Well, the one thing I will say is that as a parent, it's actually just what you're saying, Tasha, is it's actually really incredible to see how quickly your children gravitate towards that perfect marriage of text and visual culture. And so it's so interesting to me to kind of watch their kind of exploration and the advancement of what they're actually taking in and understanding at such a higher level than if they were to read a regular novel. I was going to say everybody in The Hobbit should be Maori, no? Like, anyways, I'm going to say Chimagwich and Marcy to our panelists today. Thank you so much for your time and energy and for being here. So thank you.